The East Pier was a skeleton of steel and shadows. Cargo cranes loomed against the rain-heavy sky like giant vultures waiting for carrion. Rusted chains clinked with each gust of wind, and the river slapped against the dock in a rhythm that felt almost like a countdown. Wei Chen moved first, his steps measured, deliberate. Dressed in a black coat that absorbed the night, he seemed carved out of the darkness itself. Amara followed close, her heart drumming so hard it drowned out the sound of the rain. Everywhere she looked, there were places for danger to hide, between shipping containers, behind broken floodlights, in the maze of ropes and cranes. She tightened her grip on the small device he'd given her earlier. It felt like holding a piece of fate. Wei Chen's voice was low, meant only for her ears. "Remember, stay behind me." "I heard you the first time," she whispered, but her eyes stayed on the shadows, scanning, searching. Movement flickered ahead, a figure leaning against a stack of crates, hands in his coat pockets, posture casual as if the night belonged to him. Raphael. He looked perfectly at ease, as though he were greeting guests at his own dinner party rather than standing at the edge of a trap. The glow from a single overhead floodlight sliced across his sharp features, casting half his face in shadow, half in silver. "You're early," he said, his smile easy. "I thought I'd have to wait until the witching hour." Wei Chen didn't slow. "You asked for me. You got me. Now talk." "Talk." Raphael chuckled, shaking his head. "Always so impatient. Some things deserve ceremony." He gestured lazily to the side. From the darkness, two men emerged, broad-shouldered, faces hidden under black caps. They dragged something between them. Amara's breath caught when she saw what it was. Not something. Someone. The dim light revealed a man bound at the wrists, a sack pulled over his head, stumbling with every shove. He wore a bloodied white shirt, dirt smeared across the fabric. His legs buckled as they forced him forward. Wei Chen's eyes narrowed. "Who is he?" Raphael's smile sharpened. "You mean you don't recognize him? I thought kings remembered their pawns." With a flourish, Raphael yanked the sack away. Amara's stomach dropped. The man's face was battered, swollen, but familiar. He was one of Wei Chen's former advisors, Zhang Lei. She remembered him from a gala, the one who had once whispered sharp warnings in Wei Chen's ear about enemies circling too close. "What the hell have you done?" Wei Chen's voice was low, lethal. "I..." Raphael tilted his head in mock innocence. "I saved him from himself. He was going to sell you out for a fraction of what you're worth. Imagine my surprise when he came to me with your name trembling on his lips." Zhang Lei coughed, spitting blood. His eyes found Wei Chen's. "It's not like that." "I didn't." He doubled over when one of Raphael's men shoved him forward. Amara's pulse was racing so fast she felt lightheaded. "Why show us this?" she demanded, her voice sharper than she intended. Raphael's gaze slid to her, slow and deliberate. "Because truth," he said, "is more dangerous than bullets. And tonight, Amara, you'll finally decide whose truth you belong to." She froze at the weight of his words. He wasn't threatening Wei Chen. He was threatening her. Wei Chen must have seen it too, because his arm shifted subtly in front of her, shielding her without blocking her view. "You wanted me here, Raphael. Stop circling. Say what you came to say." Raphael's expression lost its playful edge. His eyes hardened, the smile dropping away. "I came," he said softly, "to finish what we started in Hangzhou." The name hit the air like a gunshot. Amara's breath hitched. Hangzhou. The night. The flash drive. The choice she'd buried deep enough she thought it would never surface again. Raphael took a step closer, his voice carrying like silk across steel. "Tell him, Amara. Tell him why you really handed me that drive. Tell him what you asked me to erase." Her throat tightened. The memory pressed against her ribs, demanding air. The sirens, the blood on her hands, the file she couldn't let anyone see. Not then, not now. Wei Chen's voice was iron. "Don't." His eyes stayed on Raphael, but his words were meant for her. Don't let him use you. Raphael smirked. Too late. She already did. Before Wei Chen could reply, the night fractured. A gunshot cracked across the pier, echoing off steel and water. Zhonglei collapsed to his knees with a strangled cry, blood blooming across his shirt. Chaos erupted. Wei Chen shoved Amara behind a container, his body shielding hers as he drew his weapon in one fluid motion. Shouts in Mandarin ripped across the dock as his men, hidden until now, engaged Raphael's. The air filled with the staccato fire of gunshots, the acrid bite of gunpowder, the clang of bullets sparking off steel. Amara crouched low, her palms pressed to her ears, heart thundering. She wanted to scream, to run, but her eyes stayed locked on Wei Chen. He moved with precision, each step calculated, each shot clean. He wasn't reckless. He was a storm contained in flesh, bending chaos to his will. Through the haze of smoke and shouts, she saw Raphael slip backward into the shadows, calm even as the world erupted around him. His eyes caught hers across the chaos, and for a moment it was as if the gunfire faded. He mouthed 2 words. Your choice. Then he vanished. Wei Chen grabbed her wrist, pulling her to her feet. Move! He barked, dragging her toward the SUV parked at the far edge of the dock. They ducked behind containers, dodging flashes of gunfire, weaving through the battlefield Raphael had orchestrated. Amara's lungs burned, her legs trembling, but she kept up, because the only thing worse than running was falling behind. By the time they reached the SUV, 2 of Wei Chen's men lay bleeding on the ground. The others covered their retreat, buying them seconds that felt like lifetimes. Wei Chen slammed the door shut behind them and barked at the driver. Go! The SUV roared to life, tearing down the wet streets, bullets pinging against the steel before fading into the distance. Inside, silence pressed against them, thick, suffocating. Wei Chen's hand was still gripping hers, hard enough to hurt, but she didn't pull away. Not because she couldn't. Because she didn't want to. Finally, he turned to her. His eyes weren't cold. They were fire. What did he mean, Amara? What did you give him in Hangzhou? Her chest tightened, the truth clawing at her throat. She wanted to speak, to explain, but the weight of it threatened to crush her. If she told him everything, she risked losing the only ally she had left. But if she stayed silent, she might lose him anyway. Her lips parted. The words trembled on her tongue. And then, her phone buzzed. A single message lit the screen. No number. No name. Just one line. You have until dawn to tell him yourself, or I will. Amara's blood ran cold. The SUV sped into the rain-soaked night, but she couldn't shake the feeling that dawn wasn't just hours away. It was already here. The SUV tore through the rain-slicked streets of Shanghai, headlights slicing the dark. Inside, silence burned hotter than the gunfire they'd just escaped. Amara clutched her phone, the anonymous message still glowing on the screen. You have until dawn to tell him yourself, or I will. Beside her, Wei Chen sat like carved stone, his grip on the steering handle of the SUV's seat so tight his knuckles had gone pale. He hadn't asked again. He didn't have to. The question was alive in the air between them, pulsing with every heartbeat. Finally, he spoke. His voice was low, lethal. Tell me, Amara. Now. Her throat was dry. The words trembled inside her chest, begging to come out, but fear clenched around them like iron. Hi. She looked down at her hands, pale against the glow of the phone screen. It was years ago. Hangzhou. I didn't have a choice. Don't insult me with that, he snapped, his tone sharp enough to cut. There is always a choice. Her chest tightened. She forced herself to meet his gaze. Not for me. Not then. The SUV screeched to a stop at the edge of the bund. The river stretched out in front of them, dark and restless, mirroring the storm between them. Wei Chen killed the engine, the silence inside deafening. Tell me everything, he ordered. Or we're finished here. Amara's pulse slammed against her ribs. She had hidden this for so long, buried it so deep she convinced herself it would never see daylight again. But Raphael had dragged it up, and now it was either her voice or his lies. She took a breath that felt like drowning. The flash drive. It wasn't money. It wasn't politics. It was me. Wei Chen's eyes narrowed. Explain. Her hands shook, but she forced the words out. I was in Hangzhou on scholarship. Someone, planted files on me. Photos. Transactions. Enough to brand me as a spy, to have me disappear without a trace. Raphael found me before the police did. He told me he could erase it, make it vanish. The only price was the drive. And what was on that drive? Wei Chen's tone was ice. She swallowed hard. Blueprints. Infrastructure plans. I didn't even know who they belonged to until later. His eyes darkened, realization flickering like lightning. Mine. The word hit her like a slap. She shook her head fiercely. I didn't know they were tied to you. I didn't even know your name back then. All I knew was that if I didn't give it to him, I was going to vanish, and no one would ever know why. The silence after her words was worse than his anger. Wei Chen's jaw was locked, his hands gripping the wheel again though the car wasn't moving. You handed my enemy my city, he said finally, his voice so low it scraped. And now you expect me to believe you didn't know? Her eyes burned. I expect you to believe I wanted to survive. His head turned sharply, eyes like fire in the dark. Survival is what weak men cling to. You're not weak, Amara. So what else aren't you telling me? The words sliced her open. She had no defense against the truth. Her voice cracked as she whispered. He threatened to kill me if I didn't comply. I was 19, alone, terrified. And yes, I did it. I gave him the drive. But if you think I did it for power, or money, or ambition, you're wrong. I did it because I wanted to live. For a moment, the only sound was the rain hammering the windshield. Wei Chen looked away, staring at the river, his chest rising and falling like he was holding back a storm. Do you know how many people died because of that leak? He asked softly. Too softly. Her stomach clenched. No. 43. His voice cracked like glass. 43 men who trusted me. Ambushed because Raphael knew where they'd be before they arrived. Do you understand that? Their blood is on my hands. Because of you. Amara's breath shattered. Tears blurred her vision. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, he cut in, his voice harsh now. You wanted to bury it. Pretend it never happened. And now Raphael is here, using it against both of us. His words struck like blows, each one heavier than the last. She wanted to argue, to scream, but she couldn't. Because somewhere deep down, part of her believed him. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Wei Chen leaned back in his seat, running a hand over his face. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked tired. Not defeated, but close. Amara reached for him without thinking, her fingers brushing his sleeve. I'm sorry, she whispered, voice breaking. If I could change it. You can't, he said flatly, pulling his arm away. The rejection sliced her open. She recoiled, pressing back against the seat, her whole body trembling. For the first time in years, she felt that same helplessness she'd felt in Hangzhou, the night she'd given Raphael the drive, the night she'd sold a piece of herself to survive. And then, slowly, Wei Chen turned back to her. His gaze was still hard, but beneath the anger there was something else. Something raw. You think I don't understand survival, he said quietly. I've lived my whole life making choices I hated, so that others could live. You think I don't know what it's like to trade your soul for one more day? Her breath caught. His eyes softened, barely, but enough to see. I hate what you did. I hate what it cost me. But I can't hate you for wanting to live. Her tears slipped free, running hot down her cheeks. Wei Chen exhaled slowly, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. Raphael doesn't just want to destroy me. He wants to destroy us. He knows this secret is the crack in the armor. And he's right. It is. Amara swallowed hard. Then what do we do? He lifted his head, fire flickering back into his eyes. We don't run from it. We own it. If he wants to use the truth, then we burn him with it before he gets the chance. Her voice was barely a whisper. And if that ruins us? His jaw tightened. Then we rise from the ashes. For the first time since the SUV had stopped, he reached for her hand. His grip was firm, grounding. She felt the heat of his skin, the weight of his choice. In that moment, they weren't enemies. They weren't even allies. They were two people standing on the same cliff, staring down into the same fire. And dawn was already breaking. The ride to the gala was wrapped in a cocoon of silence, the hum of the SUV's engine the only sound filling the space between them. Amara sat with her hands clenched in her lap, her black skin gleaming under the soft glow of the interior lights. The red silk of her dress spilled around her like liquid fire, but inside, her heart trembled. Beside her, Wei Chen's jaw was tight, his profile sharp against the shadows. He hadn't spoken since they'd left the estate, but his hand suddenly reached across the leather seat, closing firmly over hers. Amara, he said at last, his voice low, steady. Tonight, everything changes. She turned, searching his eyes, and for once there was no wall, no icy armor. Only raw determination. He exhaled, as though unburdening years of secrets. My mother. She thinks she owns me. She thinks she owns us. But tonight, I won't let her control me anymore. Whatever happens in there, you're not just a shield or a pawn in her games. You're the woman I choose, before them, before the world. Her breath caught, emotion swelling in her chest. Slowly, she squeezed his hand back, grounding him. Then let's walk in together, she whispered. The SUV rolled to a stop before the glittering steps of the Hongzhou Grand Pavilion. Paparazzi lights burst like fireworks, cameras snapping furiously as the door swung open. Wei Chen stepped out first, every inch the unshakable air. Then he extended his hand. Not coldly, not for show, but with a deliberate tenderness that made the crowd gasp when Amara placed her hand in his. Together, they walked into the lion's den. Inside, chandeliers glistened, laughter bubbled like poisoned champagne, and the elites of Hongzhou swirled in sequin gowns and tailored suits. Madame Chen stood at the center, a queen in emerald silk, her smile sharp as a blade. When her gaze landed on them, the edges of her lips faltered for just a second. Ah, my grandson, she purred, regaining composure. And, the girl. The crowd tittered, amused. But Wei Chen didn't flinch. He tightened his grip on Amara's hand, lifting it higher for all to see. No, he said, his voice resonant, echoing off the marble walls. My wife. Gasps rippled through the room like an earthquake. Madame Chen froze, her painted smile cracking as murmurs swelled around her. Amara's heart pounded, but she stood tall, chin lifted, refusing to shrink beneath the stares. The room held its breath, waiting for Madame Chen's rebuttal, but Amara struck first. She stepped forward, her voice ringing clear. You hide behind power and wealth, Madame Chen, but everyone here deserves to know the truth. How many lives have you ruined to maintain your empire? How many lies have you told, about your son, about me, about all of this? The crowd stirred uneasily, whispers rising. Cameras turned. Madame Chen's mask slipped. Rage twisted her features. You insolent. No, grandmother, Wei Chen cut in, his tone like steel. Enough. The weight of his words dropped like a hammer. He moved to Amara's side, standing not as her master, not as her protector, but as her equal. Tonight, I make it clear, I am no longer your puppet. I will not let your schemes dictate my life. I stand with her. A hush swept through the hall. Allies began shifting away from Madame Chen, investors exchanging wary looks, whispers growing sharper. The Empress of Hongzhou society was unraveling before their eyes. Security, once her loyal shadows, hesitated at the edge of the room. At last, one of them stepped forward, bowing slightly toward Wei Chen. And in that moment, everyone understood. The tide had turned. Madame Chen's power was collapsing. And it was happening publicly, irreversibly. Amara's pulse thundered in her ears. She glanced at Wei Chen, and he met her gaze with a certainty that sent warmth rushing through her. For the first time, she didn't feel like an intruder in this glittering world. She felt like she belonged, at his side, in full view of everyone. The music, the whispers, the glittering chandeliers all blurred as Wei Chen lifted her hand to his lips. "My wife," he repeated, "not just for them but for her. For Amara." And in the middle of the storm, she smiled. The truth didn't just land in the room, it detonated. Gasps sliced the air, whispers spreading like wildfire among the gathered elites, business magnates, and political figures who had come for an ordinary gala but instead witnessed the unraveling of a dynasty. Madame Chen stood frozen, her face drained of color as Amara's trembling voice repeated the words she had uncovered. You were the one pulling the strings," Amara said, her voice carrying into the heavy silence. "You orchestrated everything, the smear campaigns, the threats, even the attacks. All to keep Wei Chen under your thumb." The crowd erupted. Eyes turned on Madame Chen with a mixture of shock and disgust. Even the Chen family allies, who had once stood silently in her shadow, were now shifting uneasily, distancing themselves as though her guilt was contagious. Wei Chen's jaw was granite as he stepped forward. He took Amara's hand, black against white silk, strength against trembling courage, and faced his mother. "For years, I thought you were protecting this family," he said, his voice heavy with restrained fury. "But all you protected was your power. Tonight, the Chen legacy changes hands. No more fear. No more manipulation. No more lies." Madame Chen's composure shattered. She screamed, lunged, clawed, but the guards were faster. Within moments, she was restrained, dragged out of the glittering hole while cameras flashed like lightning. The once untouchable matriarch of the Chen Empire was finally unmasked. The hall was chaos, until Wei Chen raised his hand, commanding silence. "Let it be known," he said, his voice steady and commanding, "that from this night forward, the Chen family stands on truth and honor. And I," his eyes softened as he looked at Amara, "I will build not just an empire, but a home, with her." Applause thundered. Allies who had doubted him now bowed their heads in respect. And for the first time in years, Wei Chen stood not as a son burdened by his mother's shadow, but as a man free. It was 6 months later. Spring had dressed Hongzhou in blossoms. The city, alive with pink and white petals, seemed to celebrate alongside the Chen family, though no celebration had ever been as grand as this one. On the banks of the West Lake, where the water mirrored the heavens, a pavilion of silk and gold rose like a dream. Lanterns floated above the lake, casting soft light across the evening sky. Rows upon rows of guests, political leaders, foreign dignitaries, tycoons, and celebrities, had gathered, their whispers weaving through the air with awe. This was no ordinary wedding. This was a union that had survived betrayal, storms, and secrets, and emerged unbreakable. Amara stood at the entrance, breathtaking in a gown that fused east and west, ivory silk embroidered with golden peonies, the symbol of honor and wealth, flowing seamlessly into a train delicate as mist. A veil shimmered over her radiant face, and her dark skin glowed under the lantern light, regal and divine. Music swelled, an orchestra blending violins with the haunting beauty of the guzheng, as Amara began her walk. Each step echoed not just in the hall but in every memory that had led her here. She remembered the pain, the betrayal, the lonely nights, but she also remembered Wei Chen's steady presence, his protection, his love. And at the altar, he waited. Wei Chen stood in a tailored white and gold chongshan, a vision of strength and elegance. For once, the weight he carried was not visible. Tonight, he was simply a man waiting for his bride. His eyes, dark and steady, never left her. When Amara reached him, the world fell silent. "Amara," he whispered, lifting her veil, his voice breaking just slightly. I thought I was condemned to live in shadows. You gave me light. You gave me love. And today, before all who once doubted us, I vow never to let that light dim. Her eyes glistened. Wei Chen, you were my enemy, then my shield, and now my heart. I vow to stand with you, not because of your empire, but because of the man you are. My husband. My home. The officiant's words were almost drowned by the roar of applause and cheers as they sealed their vows with a kiss. Deep, unrestrained, the kind that echoed of every battle won and every promise yet to be fulfilled. Lanterns were released into the night sky, thousands of tiny flames rising together, carrying the wishes of their guests. Fireworks painted the heavens in gold and crimson, exploding over the lake as if the universe itself celebrated their love. Wei Chen swept Amara into his arms as the crowd erupted in joy. Cameras flashed, music soared, Xiao Rui clapped with infectious laughter, and the people of Hongzhou who watched from afar cheered. The Chen legacy had been rewritten, not with fear, but with love. And in the glow of fireworks, amidst the thunder of celebration, Wei Chen whispered against his wife's ear, "This is only the beginning, my love. Forever starts now."